you have an opportunity at that time as well. Okay, moving on to our business items. I'm sure that all the commissioners read the minutes of August 10th for our last regular meeting, and since I do not believe there were any edits to the minutes, may I have someone, what am I looking for? I'm lost for
make a
words.
motion that
Yes,
we-
make a motion to approve them. Thank you.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, so thank you very much. The next item, 5B, preliminary plat for the Ridge at Garden Ridge, being a 13.526 acre tract located at the southeast corner of the intersection of FM 22 and FM 3009 and owned by Custom Clinics LLC. Do we have anyone present with this project? Would you mind coming up, so in case the commissioners have questions, or if you would like to start out, to avoid questions, giving us a little bit of a background on this project?
Okay, well, I'm Scott Dye with Dye Enterprises. Okay. Scott Dye with Dye Enterprises. We're a land surveying and civil engineering firm. We've been engaged by Tony Overman, who is the owner of the corner of that tract. He wants to plat it as one lot. At the current time, there are no development plans. It's just to get it platted as one lot, one commercial lot. So this is the same tract. It's not the same reduced tract, but it's the overall tract where, which I wasn't involved in, but it was with the QT, I believe. You probably all remember that. But it's that overall parcel. And so we've worked out our details with TxDOT for right-of-way dedication. They've requested right-of-way dedication, so I've already communicated that back and forth, with TxDOT. All the utility companies, city, so Sam Johnson. So, I think we've covered all of our bases. So anyways, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have some questions. I don't know if you'll be able to answer, Mr. Dye. When he did the plat for the QT station, there was some, I know you weren't involved, there were some curb cuts that I don't see on the map, that I don't know if they were unique to that project or were they going to be part of this platting as well. There was a curb cut, I believe, off of 3009 coming over the bridge, and another curb cut off of 2252. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Okay,
I don't know all the dealings of that time,
okay,
but TxDOT, in my communication with them, told me that the existing curb cut on 3009 would have to go away,
okay,
but they would allow another access there, but they don't know exactly what it will look like when that driveway permit is to come in. But then there is notation on our plat, notation says they will allow an access off 3009 and one off of 2252. Somewhere in general proximity, probably to where, and I have seen exhibits of where QT had their driveways. I got that from TxDOT. They gave that a study or something was submitted over to them. So it'll probably be in the same proximity of where those driveways are at.
okay.
Or not at, but would have been, or were proposed.
The other thing that I looked at was in one of your communications, you had something about flipping the 20-foot water easement. When you say you're flipping it, you mean just what's going to be what's going to be near the street and what's going to be near the plat?
I'm having a hard time here. I'm sorry. I have a
Okay,
bad ear.
that's right, I'm
It's
sorry.
just very hard to hear.
I'm soft-spoken anyway, people tell me. Number 4,
Number 4.
okay. If see number 4 says the easement, water easement has been extended, that's the first part. The second part, on the third sentence down in the following paragraph, it says it'll be flipped. And do I understand it to mean CPS is going to be on one side and the water's going to be on the other, or what? What does that mean, flipped?
Correct. I think originally we had the water easement adjacent to the FM 2252 right-of-way,
Okay,
and then the CPS easement behind it, but CPS, City Public Service,
Okay.
electric, gas. But they said, no, we want ours adjacent to the right-of-way, and I believe that's what that was about. This was, yeah, so that was a request at CPS, as well as discussions, I think, with Tri-Hydro with Sam Johnson.
okay.
So we did make that change to the plat that was requested. And the extension, I think, number 3, or was it was number 4, he wanted us to extend the easement there's an easement along water all the way, and he wanted us to extend it all the way to the northeast corner of the property, which we did. So this was a response to his comments and whatnot, so we responded to that.
And the last thing you may not be aware of, and maybe you are, a few months back, last year, there was some big, long hauling trucks, hauling dirt and other materials towards the back of that lot, down towards the railroad tracks. And I don't know if that was part of the sewer project, or was it part of, did that impact on the rainwater drainage, or what? To me, they had all these big piles of dirt going all the way down. I think they leveled them off, but I didn't know what that was all about. Were they trying to bring it up to grade, or what? You don't know about that?
I'm sorry, I don't know. That was there. I'm not aware.
Okay.
If I was, I'd tell you. I really don't
Okay,
know why
okay,
they're there.
okay. I just wondered,
what
because I know when when I looked at the rainwater map, I said, and they put a big ridge down there with dirt or whatever, it's going to affect something one way or the other. I don't know if they were protecting the tracks or building another swale down there or what. I don't know what they were doing. But I thought you might know as the engineer. That's all I had.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, one question. It says that the initial letter from Mr. Overman says that it has been plotted, the property is zoned as B1. Now, that's all of the property, is that correct? And
Yes.
and there's more than one lot in there, and he wants it,
No, it's not, this is all one large tract. It's all that he owns right there, which I don't remember the exact acreage. It's 13 and a half acres. It's the entire tract to be platted as one lot. There's no multiple lots.
okay. Well, it says the custom clients would like to plot the property as one lot,
Yes.
and you're,
The
but-
property is zoned, the entire tract is Zone B1, Neighborhood Services,
okay,
which is, in the current zoning ordinance, that is our commercial.
right.
Mr. Overman is wanting to plat the entire tract as one lot.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
And that actually leads to my question, because I'm actually looking at ordinance 7, Article 4, because this actually talks completely about preliminary plat. Because one of the biggest things is, from what I've read, whether he wants one building or two buildings, or is he going to divide it later on, or is it just going to be one big area, one building, or is there going to be separate stages to this plat that we need to know about?
I, at this point, don't know.
And at this point, that piece of information is outside of what we can review. for
Oh, okay,
planning
okay.
purposes.
Never mind.
Anyone else? Yes?
I have a question. Is there anything that Union Pacific has to just sign off since the plat is adjacent to the railroad? There's no, as long as the railroad's not being impacted, I'm assuming
Right,
it's.
with the plating, we're not impacting them. So there's typically not normally a review by them unless we were doing something in their right of way. So we aren't. In the event somebody moves forward with any development in the future, we put a stormwater management report out that was reviewed by Sam Johnson that's required as part of the preliminary. And there will be detention and however that looks. But I did submit a stormwater management plan that dealt with existing drainage for around the site. So, my understanding is you reviewed it and approved it.
Thank you.
The last paragraph on that document, you brought something to mind, speaks to the necessity, based on that plan, for a retention pond, detention pond, I always get them mixed up. Where do you anticipate that where would you anticipate that being? Or does it depend on the development of the property?
That would be in the southeast corner of the property. Is there on the plat, you'll see is the contours, there's contours on the plat. So, well, they didn't show up very good, but up in that upper right corner of the drawing right there, which happens to be that southeast corner.
Okay.
That's the low point. So, depending on what the future scheme of development is, which I don't know. But in light of, if you were just talking about this one lot, where is detention? We would, I logically would put it in the low corner, which would be in that northeast corner.
Okay.
Mr. Dye, hello, sir. Good to have you here tonight. Darren Bates. I'm going to just refer to your letter again that Commissioner Miller was looking at. It's the one to Mr. Johnson addressed by you. It was, Commissioner Miller talked about paragraph 4. So anyway, that last paragraph on there says a review comment from CPS stated. So it's the, in that second sentence, you talk about per your discussion with the city engineer on 2 August 22, it was understood that CPS and city easement could be flipped. So with your background and experience, how often have you heard of city easements being flipped like that?
Well, I've done a lot of platting, so there's never a standard, but typically when we talk about flipped, in this case, it was just a moving of the 14-foot electric. There's the water easement, and they wanted them flipped. In other words, put the other one in front of the other. So they wanted the electric easement to be adjacent to the right-of-way. So that's what they meant by flip. So not every city asks for easements and water easements. Not every plat involves that. So it was some communication with Sam and with City Public Service as well. And so that was just kind of the direction we were given. We'd like it flipped. So that's what we did. So in response to requests. So common, no, but have I seen it? Yes. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just a process in my understanding.
Okay, and then for that particular side that it's addressing, how does it affect the corners of that side? So if the easement's going to be flipped, or is it going to be flipped around the entire perimeter of the property?
Well, there is an easement around the perimeter of the property. This easement we're talking about was the water. There is a water easement that Sam Johnson had wanted along the front, which is the frontage of 2252.
Okay.
The idea being that the water main is on the other side of 2252. So in the event in the future, whether there's service lines coming across meters or whether it needs to be a parallel line to serve the site, because there's not a scheme of development right now, it's just a plat. So how is it going to be developed? Don't know. So he said, well, because we don't have a scheme of development, any kind of site planning, anything like that, it's a plat of one lot. It's just made available so that if that water line needs to move over or utility extensions to serve the site, that's what the water easement's there for.
Okay, and then if that change were to happen, or if it were to be flipped as it's portrayed, do you, what risk do you see associated with that?
I
flipping
see
it?
no risk. The water line, by the way, was flipped. This was, I don't remember the date of the letter.
The letter here shows the 26th of August, and the conversation, I think, was on the 2nd of August.
Yeah, yes, sir. So I think all of this had been submitted back to the city, to Sam, for review and ultimate approval of, because when he wanted those moves. So I don't see a problem with it.
Okay.
Not me personally, I don't.
All right, thanks, sir. And then it looks like there's an email sent to you from Mr. Brian, I'm going to mispronounce his last name, Hawker, maybe?
Brian
Hawker?
Hooker, yes, sir.
And in there, he writes in the second sentence that, as it's being brought up, it says, as discussed, it must be kept in mind that the ROW or right-of-way shown on the plat to be purchased by TxDOT is not sized to accommodate widening for future traffic improvements that may be required to mitigate for the development's traffic impacts. So what, do you have any comments, further comments on that, the challenge there described about the potential right-of-way challenge in the future related to the
Let me
traffic?
refresh my memory on that letter, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Now, because land use isn't known, other than obviously what's allowed by zoning, he's saying we're widening, doing what they need for widening of the highways, but that it doesn't incorporate any impacts that this site may particularly have on the highway, I think is what he's saying, because it's, they're already kind of well into the planning phases, so I think that's really what he's getting at. But in the end, they said that they would allow a driveway off of 3009 and one off 2252. But it sounds like that's what he's saying, if I remember correctly, that they just didn't incorporate our site into all their master planning. It's my understanding is kind of what that means.
I see. All right, thanks, sir.
Or could it also mean that, because your site, there's no development plans yet,
Yes.
so what TxDOT needs to do could ultimately impact your property, or Mr. Overman's property? I mean, for the traffic impact. I mean, it could go both ways, I guess,
Yeah, I
is what
guess
I
it
see.
could. I think so. Here, it seems like they were saying the future traffic impacts that may be required to mitigate for the development's traffic. So I think you're right.
Okay.
I think that's correct.
All right.
TxDOT would not share with me at this current point any of their schematic plans, no plans, they wouldn't share with me. I've requested it from Sam. I was hoping Sam may, but he wouldn't without their permission, TxDOT. So I have nothing from them to see what their future plans are. They wouldn't give it to me. So.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Could it also mean that when the plat goes to, or when the final plat or the development plans go to TxDOT asking for that ingress egress, that perhaps they may ask the developer to put in some additional infrastructure, say deceleration lanes, turning lanes? I think that's what it's really referring to. They may request some additional, the developer to put in some additional traffic mitigation
Right, right.
That's right.
infrastructure.
That's correct.
Very well. Okay, so, you have another one?
Last question, and I definitely appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I try to be simple, so I just want to basically understand this. Mr. Oberon, there's a property, just to be applied before any type of infrastructure comes in, correct? So that's why it's just very vague right now, and as far as what type of, there's no master plan for the actual plat itself. So all you're asking for is just, hey, we just need to basically set the boundaries, set the borders for this plowed land, and know what we need to do to make it happen. Am I correct with that statement?
Right, that's my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
We're planning as one lot in the future, whatever happens. Yeah,
That's all I needed.
Whether it's pad sites or whether
Yeah.
it's a sold, I really don't know. He hasn't,
Yeah, no, I
Getting
appreciate it,
anything.
but I just want to make sure I'm on the right
Yeah.
track. Thank you.
sure, good question, thank you.
Okay, based on the information submitted, which I think was very detailed, and I think developers are learning what the city actually needs when they come to bring things for approval. So based on that, Commission, I would say that,
Are we going to have a discussion first?
oh, yes, I would say that you can have a discussion. Okay. We're going to let him?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that the dais
Okay.
wants to have a discussion.
Thank you.
Going back to ordinance 7, Article 4, basically processing a preliminary plat, action by city engineer and planning and zoning commission, basically spells out what we can and can't do. We can either scope of approval or conditional approval. I think because it's very vague to us, we can do a conditional approval for a
Well, we
plat.
don't do an approval, okay?
No, for a recommendation.
For recommendation,
For a recommendation,
right.
we can make a conditional
Right, and
recommendation.
again, this is a preliminary plat.
Correct.
So I think maybe the city attorney wants to say something.
She's struggling to get the microphone on.
There we go. It was flashing me. It looks like the low battery signal. So with approval of plats, either the plat conforms to all the requirements, the development requirements, which Sam has given his approval of this plat. So the only way that you can do a conditional approval of it is that had, the city engineer indicated, we need this 1 or 2 pieces of information yet before we can give full approval. So whatever whatever land use is going to go on later on after the fact is not a legal basis to grant conditional approval.
Okay. Then I'm just trying to follow along with the ordinances.
And I appreciate you going through that process first, because that's exactly what we need to do.
Discussion?
So I guess because we can't talk outside this, we can ask the embarrassing questions in front of everybody, probably be recorded too. So here I go. I guess too, I mean, can we really make any kind of recommendation for a type of approval or conditional approval? I would think that we would just bring up some things for the city council to consider in the future as they're looking to approve this plat. In addition, just looking at what we've been provided and asking the questions with Mr. Dye, I'm not seeing any standout things that are causing me concern, so I just wanted to kind of get a look in the eyes of everybody else to see if there's anything that we may be missing or that seems odd or peculiar or indifferent. It doesn't look like there is, so thank you.
Nancy, do you see anything out of the ordinary here? Or?
No.
Okay,
No.
okay. Any more discussion?
You know, I did ask Ms. Kane a question a couple days ago, and I just want to bring up the answer to that. Ma'am, as I do, there was nothing that was really odd or peculiar. I did ask about other plats in that area, the properties in that area. It doesn't sound like there's other properties adjacent or close to that are like multiple lots going into one. It sounds like this is very simplistic and more or less common or aligned with the other properties nearby. Is that right?
Majority of the properties along 2252, the majority of them are not platted. We have recently approved platting for several properties along 2250. Of course, they're on the other side of 3009. In fact, there was one very well, no, they have not come in for their plat. So far, the properties have been, of recent, have been single lots, and I think that's going to be more or less what you're going to see happen along 2252. It's not to say that someone can't come forward in the future and replat a single lot plat into multiple lots. The property adjacent to Mr. Overman's property is the Clay subdivision, and that is actually a 2-lot subdivision.
And then some other things that we discussed over email was I just inquired about the cost because it seemed interesting to me that, you know, if it's already just basically one piece of land, then why make it just one lot? I mean, why go through all the work? So just to investigate further there, it sounds like it doesn't take too much work from the city to go through this process, the city engineers involved and some other folks. And then I inquired about the cost of doing that, which is, I'll call it a nominal fee, you know, $2,000 or less to go through the whole thing, counting everything we could think of. So I just wanted to be open with the other commissioners as far as a question that I asked, looking into it, maybe to answer anything that you may have in the back of your minds. So, because I see it as just one step closer to developing or one step closer to marketing the property or what have you. So.
I had a nosy question for the city administrator. I don't recall, Mr. Overman's been before us several times with several different ideas. I don't recall his organization, if you will, being called Custom Clinics LLC in the past. Can we read anything into Custom Clinics LLC?
No.
Okay.
That is just the name that he has this property listed under. That really is not an area that the city needs to go into.
I did it more to feed the social media than anything else.
Any other discussion? Okay, so where I was heading before was that, again, this is for a preliminary plot to make the 13.526 acres into one lot. But he also, Mr. Overman also does stipulate that, since there are no plans right now, that when it comes to developing the property, he could change his mind, or whoever then decides to develop the lot could change their mind and then re-subdivide it, but that's fine. That comes in with another process. So our job right now is to just say, okay, they've requested this preliminary plot. I personally believe they gave a lot of information that was presented to the city first, and as has been said, our city engineer has reviewed, and all questions and topics have been answered by Dye Enterprise. Yes. So, having said that, I think we can. Well, wait, but yeah, eventually, yes. But I think we've done our due diligence and can send this preliminary request for a plat to City Council for their review and approval. So now, having said all that, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve, or to recommend the preliminary plat to City Council, the preliminary plat for the Ridge at Garden Ridge, being the 13.526 acre tract of land located at the southeast corner of the intersection of FM 2250 2252 and FM 3009.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. I'm not going to say the motion again, but all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have a unanimous vote, and we will send it on to City Council for their review and action. Thank you, everyone. I think everybody really tried to do their due diligence on this, and I appreciate your time in that effort. Okay. Moving on to 5C, items applicable to planning and zoning discussed at the August City Council special meeting and September's City Council regular meeting. If it's okay with the commission, I would like to start off with the September 7th City Council meeting. And if I'm not mistaken, because the city engineer project status report was like 2 seconds. So I think we can forego that. But it is important to note that City Council had to reschedule their October meeting because they have a conflict on their normal date. And so they discussed, and I even weighed in that it was okay if they moved it to our October 12th date. So we will not have a planning and zoning meeting in October. So please mark your calendars. There was a lot of other good information that's relevant to citizens in Garden Ridge, but not so much to planning and zoning. So I suggest, and there were a number of us at the meeting, so if you weren't able to, I would suggest you go out to the video and listen to Mr. Zach and his presentation. Is very interesting. So if those of you that were there, was there anything else that I might have missed on the September 7th meeting pertinent to planning and zoning?
The ETJ up on Batcave.
The
That's
E-
actually, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, the ETJ, which is jurisdiction, basically extraterritorial jurisdiction, up around Batcave, that's very pertinent to planning and zoning, because that's part of what we should be doing also, if I'm correct. Is looking at that. But at least be aware of our
That's
boundaries.
probably more important, be aware that that's okay. And as I'm looking at my notes too, I also wanted to mention that there will be a new elementary school across from Danville Middle School in the future, which I don't know if that comes to us or not at some point. No, because it's in the county, right?
Sure.
Further down. Okay, so it's insurance, so it's not us. But it's good information. All right, thank you so much on that. Now back up to the special meeting that was held on August 29th, where the city council actually picked up on their review, because they had reviewed part of the draft ordinance in May, and they picked up on the remaining part of the draft ordinance at their August 29th meeting. Were any of you at that meeting? No? Okay. Have any of you gone back to review the video of that meeting? I highly recommend it, highly. Get yourself a cup of coffee, beverage of choice, and allow yourself 3 hours to review that meeting, but it was well worth it. And so, well, it was a little less than 3 hours, but because there are some changes or suggestions that they are making to the draft ordinance when it comes to short-term rentals. It was a very good discussion. Also, changes to the heavy industrial district, and as it applies to possible traffic impact analysis studies in the future. And so those were very interesting and I think spot on. My opinion, of course. Then they went on to Section 205, the use regulation chart, where, again, very detailed. They took the chart, and I personally believe a lot of time was spent on reviewing again the actual chart and making recommendations or changes. And so I think I'm giving you homework to say, go out and watch that video. Have your draft ordinance in front of you, and so as they are going through it, you can make notes on the draft that we sent the city. And so should you have, after they finish and make their changes and send out the changes, and I don't know if you would send it out to P&Z first, or it goes out to all residents to review. I'm not sure at this point, but it's such good information. And if, once, they have made their recommendation or their changes, there will be a public meeting to open this up to all the residents. We are also residents. So if you find something that you're not quite sure you understand or what all, you can send an email. I'm sure that they would like emails to say, oh, what about this? Or so go out and view it. It was time well spent. And they also touched on various definitions in the back of the ordinance.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Chairwoman, in the past, we had talked about that approval process to the public, including possibly a joint meeting between ourselves
Well,
and city council.
a joint meeting?
Well, when they ask the questions, when the public asks
When the
questions.
public hearing takes place.
Public hearing, is that still on the table, or are we dismissed from that anymore?
I think we have turned it over to city council, and this is in their backyard, if you will say, if you want. And so we did our work in the beginning, and then we turned it over to them. Now, with a fresh set of eyes, they are going back and picking up and reviewing things. And the biggest, I think, review was over the use regulation chart. So go and watch that video. Any other questions?
I would imagine that going over the draft, there's quite a bit to review, and then as changes or recommendations are made, would it all be approved in one go, or is it periodically approved, the changes that are recommended? Are those, I'll say, 5 changes then approved, and then they move on to maybe another 5, another 7?
No,
How does that work?
I, unless I'm wrong, I would say no. And what the changes they made, those are the changes, okay? Because they have the ultimate authority now on, making updates to the draft ordinance. But there will be a public hearing down the road, more than likely in December, I believe, because it takes time. And when they're talking about their changes, they have to be incorporated. So staff has to have time to update the draft and all. But I think if you go out and look at the video, you will understand completely, how this process will work. So, any other questions?
So if we don't, this is something that we really sticks in our craw, so to speak. Should we preface our remarks as say, this is Dr. Miller as a citizen speaking, not Dr. Miller as a member
Oh.
of P&Z?
The mayor's going to weigh in.
All right, it's on now. If I may address that. Okay, so you are always a commissioner, Dr. Miller. Whether you come up and say you're a citizen of, a resident of Garden Ridge, you are, Regency Oaks, but you are always a commissioner. So when you step forward, it's not possible to make that distinction, if that makes sense. And to clarify, if you guys, if you as as commissioners, have comments after you go back and watch that. And like Karen said, I highly recommend you do. There was a lot of work that went into that. We met, our first meeting, our first workshop was the 25th of May. And then we had the summer and budget season and the 4th of July, 50th anniversary, a lot of stuff going on. Our next opportunity was the 29th of August, and we got a lot of work done. That work was capitalizing on the hard work that this commission has done over the last 3 years. So 4 years, you're right, yes, sir. So 4 years. So we capitalized on that and had some time to really look at it as a council, and I think came up with a couple of modifications, but the document for the entirety on the whole is intact for what you guys brought to us. So when you go back and watch the meeting and have inputs, bring those directly to Nancy and I via email, so that we can, when we have the public hearing, love to have it in November, latest December, based on staff time, but when we have the public hearing, then the council can, after that, take the comments and considerations and make modifications before we say, hey, this is it. This is the new ordinance 13. Did I answer your questions and address it? Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments or anything on this? Okay, so you have your marching orders. Go watch the video. All right. Let's move on to item 5D, our activities and projects. So alternate compliance options as it relates to impervious cover. Do we have a report or not this time?
We do not have a report,
All right.
but we did have a meeting. It was very productive, and we're hopeful we'll have something by November.
Okay. Well, this will stay on the agenda, so.
Is it worthwhile to bring up any of the things that we discussed or brainstormed, or no?
Business item 5E, ordinance 210 for 2022, adopting the board commission policies and procedures. And so, it's time for chair and vice chair to be re-elected. And it would be a term of 1 year, and it would be effective in October. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that staff is making a recommendation that this be one motion for both chair and vice chair.
Okay, all right. So we take them both at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm opening it up to the commission for comments or motions. Because it can be comments so we can discuss it, but do I have any?
Well, suppose we don't like one of them.
What? Say what?
I was just teased. For a motion,
Or discussion, if you want to have a discussion, we can do that. Or if anybody is dying to be either vice chair or chair, please speak now.
Well, I think the first step should be the current chair and vice chair, if they want to continue on for the year, or if they just want to take a different step back in a different role. That should be the first step, in my opinion.
I'm a big favor of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay, do I have a motion? Actually, first of all, Commissioner Jockman, what are your thoughts?
I'm good with continuing as vice chair, but if
If something changes,
something
you're
changes, I'm okay with
moving?
or what the desires are of this commission. I'm willing to serve, or continue to serve as that capacity,
Okay.
or if there's anything that to serve as chair, be more than glad to take that on as well.
Okay, very good.
But I'm willing to continue if, as my current role, or I'm up to
Okay.
doing any of those.
So now I guess you want to hear from me. Okay, after some significant soul searching, and Dr. Miller, I understand why you decided to step down as chair because you don't get to vote. However, I too would be fine staying on as chair. If you so choose to make that happen, that's fine. And especially if Commissioner Jochman then also wants to remain, and he's not just chomping at the bit to take over his chair. It's only 1 year, right? So, having said that, and if you, the rest of the commissioners are fine, could I entertain a motion?
I motion to retain current chair of Karen Diaz and vice chair of Commissioner Jochman as, for another year, as chair and vice chair.
Okay, so we have the consideration and recommendation to that effect, right? We still send this to city council, correct?
I second.
Oh,
I second that.
we get to decide. Okay.
I second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion in place that current chair and vice chair remain for one more term effective October 2022. Do I have a second? Oh, you seconded it. I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
I guess there's no one opposed, so, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We appreciate the fact that you have that kind of consideration for this, but thank you very much. All right, so take that done. And the next item is 5F. Do we have any agenda items you'd like to put on for the next meeting, which will not be October 12th? It will be November 9th. Again, just we are keeping on the agenda the information on the impervious cover, so that's one thing. Any other topics?
I have two, and maybe it's just me being nosy. We've had two decisions we've made in the past that have gone to executive session in city council, so we haven't necessarily gotten feedback. One was the swimming pool, and the other one was the batch plant, concrete batch plant. I don't know where we are with those,
Well,
because they've gone to executive session.
okay, so in that case, Mayor wants to speak.
All right, thank you. Dr. Miller, so I know you have questions about what the council, what you've brought to the council as a commission and our decisions thereof. Some of those have happened. The decisions are ongoing discussions in executive sessions, and obviously, we can't discuss those in this forum. I will say, though, that what you're talking about is not a future agenda item. So this is just hey, this is something I'd like to talk about in November. That's what this is for, if that makes sense.
Then where do I discuss it in the realm of the meeting?
We would have needed to discuss that in item number 5, what was that, E, when I spoke? For just items, if you wanted to talk about something that happened at council meetings, if that's something I could address. But what I would suggest here is that you set up a meeting with me, we talk, you, me, and Nancy, and whatever we can discuss with you and answer your questions, we'll do. And just meet here at City Hall. Because this right now is for future agenda items for this commission to discuss in November. Not discussion right now. Yes, sir.
I understand, that's why I was putting it down to November. By November, then maybe the rest of us, besides just myself, wouldn't have the feedback. That's why I'm saying, I didn't know where to put it in other than a future agenda item for down the line.
Okay, so what you'd like to have is feedback from the council on behalf, so from the council, with the mayor talking to you guys, give you feedback on how you're doing as a commission? Is that what you're looking for?
Somewhat, yes. If we're way off track, I'd like to know if we're way off track with some things.
You're not
We
way
said
off
we-
track. We just approved the majority of your 4-year working document that you guys are doing. So let's talk offline.
Okay.
And then we can address it with Karen if that's something else we need to talk about. Does that work? Yes, sir. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I guess this would be a question for Nancy for a potential agenda item on the master land use plan. Nancy, I know there's a matrix that was in the plan, and there was some timeframes to implement the master land use plan. Can we get an update if any of these matrix have been implemented? Or when are those, it's been I guess the plan's been was approved in 2018, and I know we've been working on the rewrite of the ordinance. I guess, is the plan will then go into effect, or get implemented once the rewrite of the ordinance gets approved, then the matrix will fall into place? I guess that's, I know we can discuss, but I don't know if that could be an agenda item that could be, we get like an update on the implementation of the matrix.
Sure, I'm going to have to refresh my memory on the matrix, look at it. I should have time between now and November so that I'll do that.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to citizens' comment period, second citizens' comment period. Moving on to the second citizens' comment period. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to come up and speak for 2 minutes on pretty much any topic you wish? You do not have to have signed up. If not, then we will move on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, none opposed, so the meeting is adjourned at 6:53. Thank you, commissioners.